Hi everyone, Leanne Kubinick here for Jaded Blossom, and I have a quick little card set to share with you today. So I'm making them using the triangle square matte dies and the pumpkin spice 6-inch Doodlebug pad. Now I have card bases here. I have pieces of cardstock here cut to 4 inches square, and that's what I'm going to use for the base to basically, make a little patchwork pattern. Using all these little triangles and outline dies from this die set. So I find this is the easiest way to get a perfect result. So I cover this piece of cardstock that I have cut. This is Craft. I think it's Nina Desert Storm, actually, this one in 80 pound. I cover it with a tape runner. That one that I'm using is, I think it's an old American Crafts one, to be honest. And I'm just sticking down my border. And then I will be filling in using all the little triangles. So what I did is there are 8 triangles. So I cut out 4 different patterns of paper. So 4 little sheets of paper I grabbed. And then, so you'll get 2 triangles of each is what I'm doing. Now in the past, I've cut 8 sheets of pattern paper. That'll give you 8 cards. So this is so fun and super easy, great for, an assembly line kind of project. You just want to, do some die cutting and slap some stuff down. This is your die set. It's adorable. They also have one in the rectangle shape. So this is a perfect layer to go on an A2 square card, actually. So 4.25 by 4.25 inches. So that it'll give a little border. So I'm just going to assemble 2 of my little backgrounds here for you, but I do go ahead and make 4 of them. And like I said, I'm just covering it with tape runner from edge to edge. And it doesn't have to be perfect because this is going to be stuck down on my actual card base. This is a lighter weight craft cardstock that I'm using, but you could even use copy paper if you really wanted to. I like to use like a little bit thicker of a cardstock though, because if I wanted to, I could pop this up and it wouldn't be all saggy. It would still be nice. So basically that's that. So I'm just lining up my edge again. And this is so easy to do. Like I said, all of the Jaded Blossom dies are super easy to use. I use my Gemini machine to cut all my dies, and they cut like butter, like I've said in the past. No issues with die cutting. And super, super fast and easy to do this. I love creating with the Jaded Blossom dies. And I like the stitching. It just gives a nice, really sharp edge. You could do the same thing using SVGs, of course, but what I find about SVGs, which are fine, there's nothing wrong with SVGs, but I find that you don't get that really nice, clean edge, and that impressed kind of almost like an embossed edge with the stitching. I just love that look. It looks so sharp and clean, and that's why I really prefer dies for this kind of technique. So there we go. So I'm just putting in all my paper and I'm making almost like a little quilt block, which is kind of fun. And like I said, super fast and easy. So I'm going to be making 4 cards today, and I'm loving this new pad from Doodlebug. I love all of their, their different, designs and their different, pads for different seasons, themes. They're all adorable. You just can't go wrong. And what's nice is all the patterns match, right? So, if you choose papers all from one pad, they all work together. You can't go wrong. So there are 2 of them, but I do have 4. So now I'm going to be making my cards. So that is a 4.25 by 8.5 inch piece of paper tray ink craft cardstock that I scored at 4.25 inches. So it'll fit in an A2 envelope. And I'm now checking to make sure it's vertical because I like a vertical opening card. And now I'm going to be lining up my background onto my card base. And that's really all there is to it. So I'm just lining this up in the center of my card base. This is a great way to use up pattern paper scraps too, which is quite nice. So, it's a great way to use up all those scraps. So there we are. So there's 2 of my card base backgrounds that I've made. So now I've used the coffee dies, and I've taken the coffee cup and I cut it out of patterns from the same pad from Doodlebug. And I cut it also out of that Doodlebug, not Doodlebug, out of Nina Desert Storm cardstock, just so there's 2 layers for the coffee cup, because I'm going to be popping it up and I don't like it to sag at all. So I'm using, as you can see, I'm using 3M foam tape for this because it's a larger area. And, it's easy to cut down, so you can sort of, pop up your handle too, which is nice. If you take the paper off, it does curves perfectly fine. So there we are. I love the coffee dies from Jaded Blossom. And here, this is how I made my little thin strip. I really just cut the edge off the 3M foam tape. And I'm going to use that 3M foam tape actually for my sentiment later. And you'll see that. So there we are. I'm just going to be popping up my little handle and, filling in any blank spots on my die so it doesn't sag in any area. And I do this 4 times, but like I said, I'm only showing you 2. And there we go. Because, if you're making cards, you might as well make a few at the same time, right? You use the same, you come up with a design, you might as well make a few extras, add them to your stash. This will be for next year's fall cards, which is nice. And there we go. So I've got my little cup. And isn't that cute? So if I've got a busy background, I try not to make my focal point too busy. I try to choose papers that are a little bit more on the solid side, which is, this plaid is kind of more, tone on tone, which is perfect. It doesn't give you any, it's not too busy. It'll still pop out for you. So I was using my EK Success reverse tweezers. I'm also using Gina K Connect glue. And I'm just going to be adding on the little coffee ovals to go on these mugs now. So it looks like the mug is full of coffee. That is American Crafts textured cardstock right there. And there we go. And like I said before, this is like really just assembly lining it. It's super fast and easy. If you want to do a bunch of die cutting in one day, you could cut 1,000,000 of these patterned triangles and then just go to town making backgrounds. It's kind of mindless and fun, Like I've said in the past, not every card has to be like this, amazing design genius that takes you hours to do. You can actually just have some fun and zone out and create, which is what we like to do sometimes. So now I'm using the fall banner dies, and I'm making little pumpkins to go on the front of my little mugs. The background is cut with the Nina Desert Storm cardstock. And then the orange is actually from the same Doodlebug pad. So there we are. And I'm going to be popping them up with the Stampin' Up! Dimensionals. Depending on the area that I'm, like I said, depending on the area or the size of the thing that I'm using, will tell you which dimensionals I like to use. So there we go. So I just thought it's so pretty. I just love it. So there we go. So now I'm just taking off all of those little release papers, and then I'm going to pop up my little pumpkin with the leaf in the center of the mug. It sort of gives you an idea of that, yeah, that's some pumpkin coffee or a pumpkin latte or something in there. So there we go. So now I'm showing you the die. So that's the coffee die. So I used the coffee mug. I used the fall banner dies, the little leaves and the little pumpkins. And I also used fall coffee art for the sentiment. And I used border dies, that big plain border. So I did the same thing with the, I used the craft cardstock that I used for my card base, and I'm using VersaFine Claire Pine Cone ink, and I'll be doing some freehand stamping. So I cut out those borders using my Gemini, and now I'm going to be stamping on those borders. So like super easy peasy, like I said. And that piece of 3M foam tape that I cut the edge off to, have some dimension along my coffee cup handle, now that sliver has been cut off, it fits perfectly behind that border piece. So there you go. I don't know if you realize that border is wide enough to fit a bunch of the Jaded Blossom sentiments in it, which is pretty darn handy, I think. So there we go. So now I'm going to be popping up this sentiment on my card base. And like I said before, this is a really easy card design, no creating the wheel here. And look I'm kind of out of the frame a little bit while I'm putting on that sentiment. That's not very smart of me. Oh, I'm going to move it up. That's good. So there we go. So my biggest challenge is getting things straight nowadays. I don't know about you guys, but it does take me a bit to get things straight. So there we are. So I'm going to be popping up both sentiments, like I said, and I did this on the other cards too. I'm just showing you the two. And there I'm trimming off that little edge piece, and I'll save that for, like I said, the handles or, something thin later. And, now I'll pop up my sentiment. It fits perfectly behind that piece of border that I cut out. So there we go. Now, you'll notice that I did freehand stamping. Usually I use my Misty, but I thought, what the heck, I'll just do some freehand. I'll old school it today. So there we go. So isn't that cute? So now I'm using the EK Success non-stick scissors, and I'm just going to be cutting off the end of that sentiment strip. It'll cut through both items, and because they're non-stick blades, they don't stick to the foam tape, which is handy. So there we go. So I quite love how this one turned out, actually. And like I said, super easy. So now I'm going to be using Doodlebug shape sprinkles. It's called the Tiny Hearts. And I'm just going to put 3 little hearts at the end of that sentiment just to fill up the strip. And, draw the eye, make it look interesting. And I'm using the blue, the yellow, and the green because they match with the Doodlebug's paper. Now, you know that almost all of Doodlebug's collections kind of commingle well because they tend to pick colors close, in the same families. And, so if you pull out an orange from one theme of cardstock of theirs, 9 times out of 10, it goes with their other lines. So one time they released almost like a peachy instead of an orange, and then they do have peach in other lines. So, you just have to keep an eye on all that, and all their stuff plays well together. So now I've got my Nouveau Crystal drops, and I'm going to, of course, add these. These are my favorite. I tell you this all the time. And I'll be adding a few little crystal drops to each one, just straddling the image, straddling the sentiment, just drawing the eye. And I'm using white because it's, clean, and it'll pop a little bit on the background without, making it too busy, if you know what I mean. So there we go. So I'm just going to be adding a few little crystal drops. I was just cleaning out the nozzle there at the beginning because, got to do that sometimes. It happens. And there we are. Now, the secret to these drops are keeping them warm before you use them. So depending on your climate, you might want to stick it in your pocket, or like I've said before, if you're a lady, stick it in your bra or something like that, and get them nice and warm to use. So there we go. And like I said, they'll come out and they'll dome really nicely. That's the thing. The big thing, I guess, is you don't want to be ordering these in the winter if you're from a super cold climate because, they just get really, clumpy. I guess it's not really a technical word, but, mailing things up, up, not up north, but in Canada, mailing things in Canada, especially when it's really cold, the mail can be sitting outside, it could freeze out there. And then glues and certain liquidy products just aren't the same after they thaw. So you gotta remember that. So I always stock up on my glue if I'm getting things shipped, in the summertime and spring and stuff like that. And I do the same with my Nouveau Crystal drops. So that's what I do. Anyways, thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope to have you come and visit me again and see another video in the future. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.